And good afternoon, good morning, or good day, depending upon what hemisphere that you're in. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Crotchety Old Men podcast. I'm Gary Smith. Here's my host with me today, George Cromley. As we like to say in Detroit always, what up, though, George?
What up, Dale Smitty? How you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing fantastic, man. Absolutely
Glad to
fantastic.
hear it.
Yes, sir. And yourself?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. It's a beautiful day, and I have no complaints. Just wanted to continue to provide information, educate, expose, and opportunity for our audience, man. I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, what are we going to dive into today?
Well, Smitty, I was thinking, I listened to a few articles, business articles, like I normally am, and I'm thinking that people are kind of losing their sight on the ball. And when I say on the ball, as far as investing for the future, preparing for the future, I think they get caught up in a lot of the minutia of what they hear on the news, what they see, what they like, what they don't like politically. I know there's a lot of elections going on. I was listening to Wall Street Journal this morning, and the Fed met, and the Fed chair decided not to raise or lower interest rates. And I know a lot of people were thinking because he was a presidential pick that he was going to automatically drop interest rates. But they said inflation is still too high at about 4.2%, and he wants to get it down to about 2%. So until then, he's going to probably hold steady. So I thought it would be good to talk about, some of the things that, building good habits and some of the things that we should be doing as individuals, especially between the age of 25 and say 40, as far as preparing for the future, building wealth in an uncertain economy.
Makes a lot of sense. It's a very apropos topic for us to be talking about. And hey, let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Let's get into it. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody's experienced, unless you have an electric vehicle, the high cost of gas. If you live in one of the high earning states like New York or California, you're experiencing a lot of the higher rents. Um, AI is a big thing. Everybody's kind of nervous about, am I going to lose my job? Is AI going to take my job? What's the place? Because AI is in the news just about every day. Um, so it's like, what are people doing financially? Are they losing their sight of still investing in themselves, investing in 401k, dollar cost averaging, things like that. So I thought that was kind of important.
It's very important. And that you mentioned the job situation, and the fear or the uncertainty as it relates to AI. Here's a question, a rhetorical question that people should pose to themselves is that if you lost or your job disappeared tomorrow, what assets would still produce income that you own? Okay. um, to your point about investing, whether you have an index fund portfolio or you have a hybrid of stocks, bonds, possibly some real estate, even if it's a real estate investment trust, i.e., REIT, it would help you to at least number one, weather the storm. Number two, certainly prepare yourself for whatever uncertainties that may come. And I think to your point, George, enough people are not asking that question. And all right, if you're especially particularly those who have a concern about the AI or whatever uncertainties that may linger out there, what can I survive? Can I thrive and make it through this hump or this era? I look at things somewhat like a bell curve, so you go up and you got these transitions or what have you that happens economically. How prepared are you? And if you're unprepared or balanced, then good for you. But if you're unprepared, it's never too late to get prepared.
Right. I think it's developing good habits. We talk about uncertainty. I mean, if we think about it, in our age and our time frame, it's always uncertainty. There's always uncertainty. It may not have been the four things that I just talked about above, but it's always so. You have to build good habits. You have to know the difference between investing and gambling. You have to understand the fact that my company is paying, a certain percentage towards 401k. So I should, with a company match. So I
Mhm.
should be taking advantage of that. These are things building and growing outside of your eye view because of the fact that these things going behind the scenes. So building the good habits, like I said, 401k, investing in the Roth, IRA, so that you can avoid taxes when you do retire. So it should probably be a 60-40 split there. Like I said, index funds, real estate, REITs, and things like that. And you may want to, put in a little AI because of the fact that it's a growing industry. So there's companies out there that are growing a lot. But if you do solid investing, as I always say, invest in things that are going to allow you to sleep at night.
Right.
You're gonna be all right, and you're not worried about uh, if the market is up, market is down. Shouldn't even have to look at it on a monthly basis. Maybe look at it quarterly, because the more you look at it, the more you may get concerned because of the fact that it's going up and down.
Yeah, that's the worst thing too, because those are stock watchers or what have you, you tend to allow your emotions to overtake the events of the day, and then actually you end up messing up your investment strategy. Too often, we both have seen this. I know I've been a victim of it myself in the past. That's how I learned is that just because the stock goes down a particular day, it's not a time to panic and move all your revenue or your capital in that particular stock to something else, and now you're starting all over again. Or matter of fact, you're probably losing more momentum and losing what earnings that you may have gained to that transaction or that transition rather. So kind of takes us back to some previous episodes that we've had about financial literacy, engaging with a professional, fiduciary broker, or representative of someone who can educate you on it. I'm not, you don't necessarily have to do business with them, but if you contact them and talk to them, chances are they can help you identify, areas where you can improve your portfolio, and certainly areas that you may want to stay away from based upon your risk profile. Okay, you're not going to be able to get those high end returns if you have a low end risk tolerance. So you have to kind of match that with the portfolio, match that with, you know, stock philosophy or what have you that you're working on, and to maximize those earnings.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're between the ages of 25 and 40, the thing you have on your in your that you're benefiting from is the fact that you have time on your side. You have time
Yeah.
before you're going to retire. So, if you invest in certain stocks, you just have to ride it out. Sure, they're going to go up and down. And the old adage, which I keep telling people, if you invest in a particular stock or fund and it goes down, that's a good thing because of the fact that you're going to gain more shares of that stock. So then when it goes up, you but the same thing. You're gonna make more money, from a paper perspective because of the fact that now you have the more shares and it's a higher rate. So that's where your dollar cost averaging comes in. And it's so important to set that amount. Look at your budget and see if that budget is $100, $200, $50, $25, whatever it is per month. Save that on a consistent basis. You have to understand the difference between long term opportunities and risk. And I'm going to use this as an example. With the current conflict, overseas, it affected gas. So gas pricing went up probably from $75 a barrel to somewhere around 120, 125. So obviously, if that happens, the price of gas stock or oil stock went up. So to me, that's somewhat of a risky investment because now you're looking at trying to time the market as far as how it's going to go, as far as how far it's going to go up, and then when something positive happens, the strait is open or the war is almost over, it's going to start to drop. So you're into timing the market, and that's to me is a bad thing. You can't really time the market. That's why you want to just get into something. Like I say here again, those types of stocks that allow you to sleep at night. Whether it's the things that you eat, McDonald's or Home Depot or those kind of stocks or funds. That S&P 500 funds that invest in the entire market. The whole S&P 500. So you want to get into things that are going to be more consistent, and that's where you want to kind of stay and let this stuff build.
George, I believe that one of the probably the, and I'm gonna use this word with tongue in cheek, safest investment strategies for especially for one, and even if you are adept or astute at investing, but for a newbie or someone that is uncertain as to what they should do, where they should go, what they should invest in, I'm somewhat opposed to the individual stock selections because that involves more study, more time, more knowledge about what you're doing. And to your point, using those guardrails in which will help at least help direct you. But the index funds, I mean, I'm a big proponent on that because you look at your industries pretty much, whether Coca-Cola is outpacing Pepsi or Fago or whatever, who gives a good rest? But what matters most is that industry of consumption of food and beverages. You look at where the industry of food and beverages is going already. With a good index fund, is going to already identify the top three or maybe top five players in that genre or in that industry. And so, whether it's energy, whether it's transportation, whether it's industrial, it doesn't matter. If it's energy, they're going to take the top 3 to 5 energy related companies, whether it's fuel and oil. You're going to see your Shells, your Exxons, and your Marathons, and so on and so forth. Typically, they come in threes. So with an index fund, if you're doing dollar cost averaging, you're actually investing in all three of them. Okay, so you should be able to sleep well at night, not panicking just because Exxon went down and BP soared. Okay, you're going to capture both of those. And so, because it's a diversified portfolio, let's say, the earnings, positive earnings typically outweigh any losses that you have. More importantly, because you are using a dollar cost average approach, you're going to have time as well as the compounding effect on your side. And you named it, man, between 25 and 40 years of age or what have you, when you're in your primary earning years, that's the time. But man, I'm telling you, especially if you have one of those positions or jobs or what have you that match your 401k or your 403b and all those type of programs that's out there, you want to go to the max, okay, if you can, because if you can put 5% aside and your company matches that 5%, that's 10%. That's percent, and man, that accumulates fast. Okay, so be wise, leverage the expertise, and leverage the technology that's out there by selecting an index fund.
Absolutely. And as we go through that, I want to make sure our audience understand. We understand the types of things that you impact, that are impacting your life on a day-to-day basis. For example, do I rent or do I buy a home? Things like that. Do I look for a job in AI or something outside that's AI proof? Those are kind of important. I heard something interesting here again on the Wall Street Journal. The recent elected mayor of New York is was renting, before he became the mayor, and now he lives in obviously the mansion that's set aside for the mayor. But in New York, the housing pricing is really high. I was listening to where one couple owned a house and they were expanding their family, so they were looking at a new house. I think it was a 4 bedroom at the price of 2.3 million. So these are just average individuals. These aren't high. I mean, they have to be high earners, obviously, but even their plan is, we'll move into this 4 bedroom and then we'll probably rent out one of the other bedrooms, because of the fact that, to make it affordable in New York. And I'm sure there's other cities that are like this also, where the rent is so high. You have to look at things like that. I know my son in Chicago, he decided he needed to downsize a little bit and, reduce the amount of rent that he was paying. So now he's sharing a 3 bedroom with two other guys. So it's interesting how, the things that people have to do to manage their finances on a day-to-day basis. But those things in mind, you still have to invest yourself for the future because of the fact that we're not getting any younger.
Right. George, economic uncertainty often creates a lot of buying opportunities, also. Okay. What generally happens during a recession or market disruptions are opportunities are born. And so, if you're paying attention to those type of things that happen every day, um, that happen. I think whether it was Warren Buffett or whoever said it, and I'm going to just paraphrase it, that fear creates discounts. All right. And when there are certain people who get afraid, and that's what happens to a discount can be negative if you allow fear to overcome you through an emotional decision and you're not well informed, then yeah, you can make a mistake that could wipe out years of accumulation by one decision that you made emotionally. So don't be led or driven by the emotion of fear. I believe there's a lot of historical examples of fortunes being built during downturns. And so it's not a matter of timing the market, it's a matter of knowing what time it is in the market. That's what people need to pay attention to. And I think we kind of broached this a year or two in another episode before about the 18-year cycle. And that is in itself knowing what time it is in the market. Because, like you said, George, you can't time the market, all right, knowing, okay,
Mhm.
let me buy it, unless you got somebody on the inside now. Now, let me put this precursor out here right now. Now, if you got somebody on the inside that can give you some information, then text me. All right. I ain't concerned about inside information because I got a way around that. So not saying encourage anybody to break the law now. Hey, but let's bend it as far as that puppy will go. Okay. But no, seriously, but having that inside information is like primarily educating yourself. If you got a specific area, so say real estate. Okay. All right. So you can't buy those homes, or you can't buy that lot where you can develop 100 homes and do all the math and create these $1 million of revenue. But doggone it, there are REITs out there that you can invest in on a dollar cost averaging. So whether it's medical rehab facilities, we know a lot of that is happening because hospitals are kicking you out. You may have a surgery today, the next day you up and walking around in some rehab facility, or there's a ton of knee research, knee replacement, hip replacements, things of that nature that happens every day almost. And those are taken care of primarily in outpatient surgery. And then the recovery process is typically done inside of physical therapy. Riding around through your neighborhood or your community, you'll see more and more of these off-site, single tenant, physical therapy type places. A lot of them. And look here, they're not there if they're not making money. Okay. And so investing in those types of investments. So whether you do it single handedly, meaning that you identify with a commercial real estate agent or broker who can direct you and lead you along that acquisition process, or invest into a REIT or a index fund, if you will, that specializes in medical real estate, or it could be industrial real estate. We all know about logistics in a sense that nothing gets sold until you move products and stuff. All right. And so from the time it gets to the dock, I should say, to the time it is loaded on a truck and to taken to a warehouse and all that process and how that goes, that supply chain. Well, there's a lot of stops in between the time it hits the American shores and to the time it hits your house. And so through that, logistics play an important part in that. I don't see AI disrupting that at all. All right. And so that's another one. Now, you may not know the exact logistic company to go invest in directly, but again, take advantage of the information and technologies already out there by identifying an index fund that already has those logistic properties or companies in it. And I could go on and on. You can use this same filtering process for whatever industry and look for the top 3 to 5 industries that are necessity based. It's not that difficult, y'all. Look for those, educate yourself, find an investment fund or an index fund that has those 3 or 4, whatever, and dollar cost average. And I believe you'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so important because of the fact that, you have to understand that there's multiple ways to invest. But the whole key again is get off the sideline and quit waiting on, something to happen, something to calm down, something to change. Because it's always going to continue to be this way. So what do? You still have to follow the same adage, which is building a habit, saving 3 to 4 months of your income just in case something happens. Putting money away for that vacation, so that when you're ready to go, you don't have to dip into your fund. um, those are the kind of things that you want to do, just to make sure you're maintaining, here again, your ability to sleep well at night, and so that you're not worried about, if I invest here, what happens here? If I lose my job, what happens? So you kind of prepare yourself. And no, there's no perfect scenario. There's no perfect answer. I mean, this is life. So,
Yeah.
but we're trying to give you from our perspective, because we've lived through all this. I've lived through enough mergers and acquisitions, through my career, that I know, what's happening. I've seen the company stock drop from start as a high of $90 a share and drop to $2 a share, or then it was wallpaper on the wall. It didn't work, wasn't worth anything. So, but I survived because I had good habits. And that's what we're trying to do, is to make sure everybody understands that you have to have rounding habits, balance portfolio, balance living financially.
Amen. Amen. There's another rhetorical question to ask yourself is that are you preparing for the next opportunity or are you reacting to the next crisis? All right. You have to think about that. I mean, preparing, everybody wants to win, but few of us are willing to prepare to win. And to prepare to win is primarily just putting some money to the side, man. I mean, putting some money into, don't just let it sit idle in a savings account. Put money that you're going to allocate every month. It's the consistency that brings on the accumulated wealth process. If you're inconsistent with your savings, if you're inconsistent with your investing, then you can't possibly expect to have a consistent flow of recurring revenue coming back. All right. So you must establish, I should say, that consistent cash flow that is more valuable than chasing the next hot investment, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Uh, Forget what the neighbors or the boys in the block is talking about, or whatever that stuff that goes on in communities and stuff. Consistent cash flow invested on a regular basis is going to get you where you want to go, as opposed to chasing the next hot thing.
Yeah, I mean, so 3 rules to follow for the next 20 years. Number one is invest every month, regardless of market headlines.
Yep.
There comes your consistency. Just do it. That's going to get you. And here again, I say the amount is based on what you can afford. Okay. The second thing is keep costs low and use diversified index fund, which Smitty talked about earlier. And the last thing is increase contributions, as your income increases. So if you're in a 401k and you're doing X percentage, and you get a raise, take a little small percentage and bump it up a little bit. These are the kind of things, here again, consistency and building these types of habits are going to help you in the long run.
Yeah. You know, I'm going back to my list of rhetorical questions again. Is that this? Would you rather own something that pays you monthly, or something that you hope someone's going to pay you more later? All right. Which a lot of times we look for that big fish, that big home run, and you get this lump sum. Well, getting a lump sum is not as all that it sounds like. Okay, because getting that lump sum also entails you paying a lump sum in capital gains, depending upon how you got it. All right. When capital gains come, that's of course what you're paying taxes on. But shucks, if you build your portfolio, and like you, George, you're a great example of this, buying single family homes over a period of time and developing a portfolio of these homes. And so I'm just going to use a small number of 10. But if you got 10 single family homes that's paying you on average $1,000 a month, and you standardize your operations, meaning that, okay, if one of your houses needs a refrigerator replacement, then you're going to make sure that you get the same type of refrigerators in all 10 of them, so that you can keep your costs down and be able to manage that cost of your operation. So, shucks, if your operations take up 50%, which is typical, 50% of your revenues, that's a net $500 a month that's coming in from 10 different homes. That's a $5,000 a month revenue stream that's coming in every month. 5,000 times 12 is $60,000. Well, $60,000, as I understand, is probably more than what the average person earns on their job. Okay, and which is taxable versus with your real estate portfolio. And I'm just using you as an example. You have all these other things that can offset a lot of taxes that a regular job would not do. And so from the depreciations and all this other stuff that goes along with that. Now, I'm not advocating that you everybody go buy real estate no more, and I'm advocating anybody to quit their job. But what I am saying is that think about it. That extra $60,000 of recurring income can prepare you now to invest in other things than what we were talking about. And so it doesn't have to be 10 houses. Heck, you got to start with one. It could be one or two or three. But that's what I'm talking about as far as preparing. I just picked real estate as an example because it's something that's more accessible to most of us. All right. In most of the country, I mean, most of the communities around the country. But these are just other ways in which you can start preparing now. Okay. While, like you said, in your formative years where you really, you're making money and stuff, and to get out of the mindset and or the position of living from paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
That's all we're talking about here. Yeah, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, I just want to say this other thing. As a precursor, we're not giving anybody any stock advice. Okay, we're not doing any of that stuff. So don't be sending us to FINRA or any of that other mess out there. We are not uh, investment advisors. None of that. All we're doing is sharing our opinions, sharing information that we gleaned from other sources that you may not have access to. Thanks.
Well said, Smitty. And what I was going to add on to that was you got to keep in mind is not how much you make, it's how much you keep. So
Amen.
that's so important. And because real estate, it was like you say, much a large part of my portfolio was the fact that I like the fact that you get the tax advantages. Everything that you buy for those rental properties, you can write off on your taxes, therefore lowering your income, therefore paying less taxes. And that, at the end of the day, I am not encouraging you not to pay taxes. What I'm encouraging you to pay the amount that you're capable of as far as what you own and what you can operate. So you want to make sure that you take advantage of those tax advantages because that's the whole benefit of owning property. So take advantage of tax advantages wherever you can, understanding that even borrowing against a real estate piece of property, you don't have to pay taxes on the money you borrow, and you can use that however you want to. You can use it to buy another piece of property, or you can use it to pay off bills. But here again, you have to be strategically have a strategic mindset. That how things work, that your lifestyle is just like a business. You have to operate that way so that you're here again, you're taking advantage of all the way the law is written. It's not that you're looking for loopholes. It's how you following the law. And that's what everybody else does. If you're not doing that, you're cheating yourself.
Yeah, and understand that thing about loopholes. Loopholes are not illegal. They're just ways in which if you understand the law or hire someone who does understand the law, there's things and verbiage in the law that will allow you to legally pay zero or very, very low taxes. That's all we're talking about. All right. Uh, wow. And I want to go back to what you said earlier, George, about the inflation piece. Inflation is quietly destroying wealth. All right. And so we have to make sure we understand that saving money is not the same as growing money. All right. That's why I said not to put your money just in a savings account, but in an account that's going to pay you some interest. But let's take a look at this. If inflation was at 4%, no, yeah, let's say inflation 4%, because that's pretty much where we are right now. And your earnings are 2%. Are you actually making money? Of course not. You don't need a calculator for that. So that's got to be your floor. So whatever you look into needs to make above 4% of inflation. Use that as your benchmark. When inflation or if inflation gets back down to two, all right, then a 4% bond is going to be okay because you're going to net a 2%, all right, or a 6%, whatever else that's out there. But let that be your floor and saying that, okay, Inflation is a silent killer. It's almost like hypertension is to health. You don't know until it's too late, until that heart attack or that whatever comes. Well, let's not have a heart attack to our finances. All right, by keeping your eye on inflation, understanding where interest rates are, it will be an indicator to you whether or not you should borrow money or how much money you should borrow to purchase a property or to purchase a business, right? So you got to know those things. And you don't have to become a financial analyst, but these are just simple things, ladies and gentlemen, that comes across the news and in threads every day. Just Google it. I mean, or IEI or whatever. What's inflation? What's the bank rates? What's the borrowing rates? And where can I find an index fund that has maybe averaged over the past 10, 15, 20 years, 8, 10, 12%? Understanding, however, that past result earnings does not dictate what you're going to make in the future. But at least you got a track record, whatever it is that you're investing in, and so the forwarding thoughts and things of that nature could at least make you above the whatever that inflationary rate is. Okay, hopefully I didn't confuse anybody with that, but
No, not at all. In fact, you said something so important. I should have started this whole podcast off by saying that if you think you're investing by putting your money in the local bank, you're not. And that's my whole emphasis or thrust behind this thinking of this particular topic is because a lot of people think that if they're putting their money in a local bank, that's an investment or they're growing the word savings. It's not because they're paying you about what 2% at best or 0.01 at best, and then they're turning around and using your money to loan out to everybody else out there and making about 10 to 12%.
yeah,
So you got to get out of here. Again, I said you got to get off the sideline and get into the market and allow your money to work as hard for you as you work for it. And those, that's a Warren Buffett thing. If
yeah.
you're not making money while you sleep, then you're going to be working for a long time.
All
A long time.
long
So
time.
yeah. So hopefully this stuff has helped you today. We have to go circle back around sometimes and just kind of remind our audience that don't take your eye off the ball, because if you're looking at the news every day and they're going to keep you off the ball. They're going to have you worried about, is the market going to crash? Are you going to crash? Are you going to have enough food to put on your table? Yeah, right. Understood. But I still got to stick to my plan and how I'm building it for my family. And these are the things I'm going to stick to because guess what? That's what they did, and quiet as is kept. So you have to make sure that you stay right in line with what everybody else or above what everybody else should do. Be above this some of this nonsense that you hear every day.
Right. Well, one last point from my perspective is this: financial literacy is the new economic survival skill. Okay. Um, we got to get on board with that, especially as African Americans here in America, here within our communities, our own households, and things of that nature. Financial literacy is it's the new economic survival skill. And most people work for money because they never learn how money works. Okay. Understanding debt, understanding cash flow, understanding investments, teaching technical literacy to our future generation. We should be sitting down with our kids and showing them what you're doing, showing them the importance of savings. And if you're giving them an allowance or if you're buying things for them or whatever, trinkets and trash is what I call it. All right. You take a portion of that money and show the difference about them putting the money aside and how much fun it is to watch it grow. Um, Last but certainly not least, please forgive me, you all who do this, but I see it every doggone summer. You got people, little kids graduating from kindergarten, going to first grade, or from first grade to third grade. And you got parents out here spending literally thousands of dollars, man. Thousands of dollars for little Pookie or little Shaniqua. They're only going from kindergarten to first grade. You have a graduation like they just graduated out of Harvard with a PhD. Those monies are going to people who don't give a fat rat's behind about you. All right. That $1,000 on that new outfit and all this other send off, where are you sending them to? To the poorhouse. That same $1,000. Imagine if you invested that and compounding interest at 10% over a 10-year period of time. Little Ray is 8 years old. In 10 years, he'll be 18. That $1,000, you'd be astounded by how much money he would have or she would have by the time they really graduate, which is from high school, okay, going to college or going on to a trade school or whatever. Napoleon Hill wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich. Let's start thinking, okay, where can I get the most bang for this buck? Yeah, I'm happy that my kid is graduating, if you want to call it that, from first grade to second, or even from eighth grade to high school. But doggone it, over those period of years, if they don't learn anything else, they need to learn financial survival skills.
Absolutely, Smith. I just tell a quick story. Was I was in the presence of some high schoolers, and they were asking me some questions about financial. It was around lunchtime, so they had just went to one of your favorite fast food places, and they were eating their lunch, and they asked me, how did I get to where I was? And I said simply, by not going to the fast food place and spending $12 for whatever you bought, I got my little bag lunch right here. And I probably spent about a quarter of what you had, and probably more
I'm about to
nutritional
say,
than what you're eating. So that's a quick story. But like I said, I think we've hammered home this idea. We can't leave without you obviously giving us some words of wisdom. I know those last words were pretty impactful, but still got to give something for our audience. What you got for us today, Smitty?
all right, let's see here. This is by Booker T. Washington. The individual who can do something the world wants done will in the end make his way regardless of race.
Regardless of risk, so important. Just
Regardless
keep
of
in mind that everything you do is based on a decision, whether it's get up in the morning, whether it's brush your teeth, whether it's, buy your lunch, whether it's go to class, whatever it is, it's a decision a conscious decision you make. It ain't nobody else's fault. So yeah, it's life is full of risk. You make a decision.
make a decision.
So with that said, as we always say on the Crunch It Over Man, if you didn't know,
Now you
now you
know.
know. Take care. Be blessed.
Peace.